Welcome back to Foothills Firewood, guys. My name's Britt, and today we're going to be talking about how to identify oak. Let's get it. All right, guys, welcome back to the wood yard. It is a beautiful, beautiful spring day here in North Carolina. We are off work, so you already know where we're at. Right here behind me, I have a beautiful load of white oak. And as my tree guy was booming this over into my wood yard, I thought to myself, maybe now would be a good time to have a conversation about how to identify oak, as well as some of the key characteristics that I hear kind of get misconstrued when talking about oak or identifying oak. So let's get into it. For starters, when it comes to oak, I'm going to be referring to this more in the firewood sense. There's a ton of videos on YouTube that show you how to identify the differences between red oak trees, white oak trees, and then the species specifically based on the type of acorns they drop, based on the type of leaves that they hold. I'm a firewood guy, so we're going to be talking about this in the terms of firewood, oftentimes with no leaves, sometimes with no bark. These are the things that I want you guys to be able to identify oak with. When you walk out into the middle of the woods and you see a completely dead tree, or it's a spar sitting out there all by itself, and you cut it down, if it's oak, you'll know it's oak, as long as you learn these things. The first thing that I'd like to talk about in regards to oak identification is understanding that in America, or in the US, we only have two groups of oak native to the United States. That's red oak and white oak. And I think a lot of people learn this wrong, because I will put a species specifically of red oak up, and people will say that's not red oak. So they think that it's two different trees. Red oak and white oak are two different groups. Within the group, there are many species of red oak, and I don't have a list here. Maybe I can pop one up on the screen, but just to give you an idea, pin oak is a red oak, black oak is a red oak, willow oak is a red oak. There are many red oaks. White oak is a group. So a lot of people see the classic scaly bark like you're going to see here, which is a pretty quintessential indicator that you've got the classic Quercus alba or white oak. But the problem is there are many white oaks, okay? There is your Quercus alba, which I have in my yard. There is post oak, that's a white oak. We have chestnut oak, that's a white oak. Burr oak, that's a white oak. So that's the main thing I want people to understand right out of the gate. There are two groups of oak. Now, again, everything that I'm saying is going to have some caveats. The first caveat is that there is a third group called the Cerris oak, C-E-R-R-I-S. That is another oak group, but it is non-native to America. It's an Asian species that is naturalizing in America. And you're looking at things like sawtooth oak. If you Google sawtooth oak, that is neither a red nor a white. It is a Cerris group of oak. But with that being said, it does hold or possess more of the red oak qualities. Nevertheless, it is not a red nor a white. It is a Cerris group. However, that's an Asian species that happens to be being planted over here, and there are a few of those as well. But for this demonstration, just know that there are two groups of oak native to America, red and white. And that's not the end of it. There are many of each, okay? The next thing that I will say is that when identifying oak, bark is a poor indicator. Bark is a poor indicator to identify by itself, to identify any tree. A lot of people, that's how they learn. They're out in their wood yard, they do a lot of splitting, maybe they heat with wood, they've split with their grandfather, their father, their son, and they just see a lot of wood coming in and out of the yard. The problem with that is you're seeing wood within a 10-mile radius of your house, okay? A lot of the white oak will look the same. You're processing the same species of trees because you're getting species from local to you. But with that being said, again, bark in and of itself is a poor indicator. Now, do we use it to help us decipher? Absolutely. But what I want you guys to be able to do is to take a piece of firewood that could be 5 years old or it could be 5 months old and be like, okay, that's oak and here's why. And let me show you how to do that. All right, guys, what we have here are a couple pieces of firewood and a couple cookies that I have recently cut. This one's pretty old. This is actually a black locust cookie. I'm going to zoom in on it. You guys can see those growth rings. Now this is a piece of white oak. And this is a piece of white oak. Every single oak in the world will have what is called medullary rays. These are the radial rays, not the growth rings. Now remember, the growth rings run this way. Medullary rays run radial to the growth rings, so perpendicular straight through. I grabbed this piece because this piece is great at showing the medullary rays. You see these white rays? These are rays that carry nutrients across the growth rings. Sometimes you have to train your eye to be able to see it. And a lot of times the eye wants to see the ring. Sometimes on a really old piece, the eye wants to see the checking or the cracking. But here, if I can move to the light, if you look at it long enough, you will see these little tight white rings that run about the size of a pencil lead width all the way down this piece of oak. Not the saw marks that go this way, not the rings that go this way, but the radial medullary rays that grow across those. Here's another one. Hopefully this one will be a little easier to see. You see those white rays that are basically running north and south in this video? If I turn it this way, they're running east to west. Those are called medullary rays. Every piece of oak on earth will have that. Look at this piece of black locust. No matter how close I get to it, you will not see rays. You're seeing some checking here because this has started to dry out. And that's the hardest part when you're trying to identify oak, is to try to look past the cracks and the checking, especially if it's a really dry piece of oak where it's got a lot of checking. You can see these the porosity here in the rings. Hopefully, maybe not. Nevertheless, you will not find medullary rays on that. That is not how that tree works. You will always find medullary rays on oak. Something else that I will say in regards to oak and the medullary rays is that red oak, all of the red oaks, are a lot more porous than the white oaks. That's why white oaks are used to build ships. That's why they are used for bourbon barrels, holding liquid. They're extremely rot resistant. That is because of their composition on a cellular level. The medullary rays are much tighter. When you get to the red oak, oftentimes, and I don't have any up here, oftentimes those medullary rays are even more pronounced and easier to see. So it's one of those things where if you're questioning the piece of firewood, look at the end grain. It'll always be on the end grain, whether it's a fresh split or whether it is a split that you had sliced the cookie off 5 years ago. Those medullary rays do not disappear. Again, could take some time to train your eye to see it, but they will always be there. All right, guys, like I mentioned earlier, there is always a caveat. There are so many exceptions when you're talking about scientific classifications and taxonomy. Well, here is the exception for oak. I told you, if you see medullary rays, you 100% have a piece of oak. That might have been a little bit of a fib. There is one exception to that rule, and that is the beech tree. The reason beech is an exception is because oak is in the beech family. A lot of people don't know that. Now you do. The good thing about beech is, as soon as you see medullary rays and you think I have an oak, one of the next things you do as a firewood guy is look at the bark. As soon as you see the bark of a beech tree, you're gonna know that's beech, not oak. But that is the exception. you will sometimes see medullary rays in a beech tree. If you guys don't have beech trees around you, I'll try to superimpose a picture here of what a beech tree looks like. But the bark on a beech tree is almost described as like an elephant skin. It is a very slick gray color bark. For anybody who is interested at all in the scientific classification or the taxonomy of different types of oak, I'll give you an idea of how it should be written out or how it should be labeled. And understanding these different classifications will actually help you in identification. If you don't care about this, fast forward it and you can watch a video of the Wolferidge busting some of this stuff up, because I do need to get something split on my day off. But I'm going to give you guys an example. I'm going to use pin oak as an example, and I need to talk about that as well. But starting with pin oak, because a lot of people have seen or used pin oak before. Pin oak is an excellent firewood. Pin oak is a red oak. So you would say pin oak is of the red oak group. The way you would classify pin oak would be beech family, oak genus or Quercus genus, red oak group, then you go to the subgroup, black oak subgroup, pin oak species, Quercus palustris. So family, genus, group, subgroup, species. That's how it's written out. And again, caveats to that, it could be shorter or longer. All right, I was gonna leave this portion out, or I wasn't gonna talk about this, because there are so many different avenues or routes you can go when talking about identifying oak or just oak characteristics. And so sooner or later you just have to put a cap on the video. However, I felt the need to add this because I did just use pin oak as an example, and in my area, North Carolina in the southeast, that is the grow zone for a willow oak. This may not be an issue around the United States. When you see these pictures, you'll be able to tell whether or not it's been inaccurately labeled. However, I get on Facebook Marketplace all the time. I talk to tree guys, whether they're licensed arborists or not. Lawn guys, I don't know. I'm not trying to shame anybody's profession. Getting a tree safely on the ground is getting a tree safely on the ground. It kills me though when I turn on the internet. All right, boomer. When I log on to the web, the World Wide Web, and I see people saying free pin oak, and I click on it, and it's not a pin oak at all. It's a willow oak. I don't know why people in the southeast call willow oak pin oak. It does have a pinnate leaf, and I am going to pop a picture here of willow oak. If you have this tree in your yard and your tree guy, lawn guy, or whatever it may be, calls this a pin oak, do not pay that guy to take this tree down. All right, hire someone else. Licensed or not, call an arborist. This is not a pin oak. The only thing that a pin oak and a willow oak have in common are that they are both red oaks. They are both of the red oak group. They are both of the oak or Quercus genus, and they are both of the beech family. Family, genus, group, and then after group, they split paths and they delineate, okay? That's enough nerding out. Let's split some Quercus alba. that last dump that you saw is going to wrap it up. I hope I was able to impart some knowledge or some clarification on how to identify oak, as well as some of the nuances in the oak genus. If you guys have any questions, again, I am not a formally trained professional, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I am happy to either give you the answer or find the answer for you. So again, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for spending some of it with me today. I appreciate all the comments, the likes, the subscribes and shares. And until next time, we're out here having fun. Thanks for watching.